Did you all shower?
Did we follow the 3-2-1 rule? How good have we been so far about following the 3-2-1 rule? 3 hours of sleep, 2 meals a day, 1 shower a day.
Soap and water, learn it, love it, live it.
Yep.
Rinse and repeat.
Julie is not a shower.
So welcome, y'all. 10 years of JordanCon.
Good Lord. Some days more than others.
Some days more than others is true. So I didn't know what kind of crowd we were going to have. You know, we have a little bit smaller crowd than I was initially hoping for. I feel like I should have picked the panel a little bit more by letting y'all know that we're going to tell all of JordanCon's dirty laundry.
Spill the tea.
Spill the tea. That's right. That's right. And that's what I was going to say is if y'all weren't at the last panel where we talked about some of the shenanigans that we got up to at JordanCon 1 with Matt Hatch and Jason Denzel from Theoryland and Dragon Mountain, y'all missed out. And you don't know what the Forsaken Tea Party is. I'm back for you.
I was probably offside for any supplies.
Yes.
Yes. So yeah, 10 years.
10 years.
10 years is a long time.
9 years if I told you so.
Do you want to hear this story? Because I love telling the story. I love telling the story. So the idea for JordanCon had been kicking around for several years before we actually pushed the button and launched it. Like Matt Hatch especially, I always blame Matt for the idea because at DragonCon 2005, when I was still running the Wheel of Time track there, Robert Jordan was the author guest of honor, and so Theoryland came out in a big group, as they do, to be weird and creepy and adorable. And so Matt was like, this was the first time I'd ever met Matt Hatch, and Matt is like, this is really cool, but you know what, you should make one that's just for us, right? Just for us, none of these lesser fandoms, just Wheel of Time people. I'm like, that's a stupid idea. Who would go to just a Wheel of Time convention? Come on. But that idea just kind of stuck with me for a couple of years, and other people kind of picked up on it, and there was conversation within the fandom about not if, but when do we launch WatCon was what people kept calling it. And so the idea was out there, and I knew there was a couple other people discussing it, some groups discussing should we launch a convention, should we do this, should we do what would it look like, and this always sounds really horrible of me when I say it this way, but I knew I would do a better job than any of them. I had a very specific thing in mind when I pictured a Wheel of Time convention, and then how that convention would grow and evolve over time, which is not too far different than what we're at right now. And I knew none of those people that were thinking about doing a Wheel of Time convention had that vision. They weren't thinking of making it into a general fantasy literature convention and making it a real convention. They were thinking, we're going to throw a drinking party for us and 100 of our closest friends, and we're going to wear our costumes, and maybe if we're really cool, Robert Jordan will come and hang out with us and we can do shots with him. That's what other people were thinking. And that does sound fun. Don't get me wrong, that sounds like an amazing time. But it wouldn't be a convention. And so I didn't want a drinking party, I wanted a convention, I wanted vendors, I wanted an art show, I wanted ribbons and badges and all, I wanted everything that we have today. Tiaras, the tiaras came later, but I'm definitely on board with it. Look how good I am. But yeah, so I started talking to Jimmy about it, and Jimmy was like, this is a terrible idea.
And then she started talking to me about it, and I was like, this is the best idea.
Yes, because Aubree and me are not a good combo some days.
Oh, but we really are. So most of the things at JordanCon that we do and that we get up to, and even stuff that we consider kind of our core traditions or shenanigans or whatever word you want to use from just kind of that con culture, is stuff that either me or Jennifer was like, wouldn't it be funny if?
It would be so funny.
Wouldn't it be great if we could get people to? And then Jimmy doesn't stop us.
Jimmy is more unable to stop us. So yeah.
Usually when the phrase starts with, wouldn't this be, I'm out the room.
So
how much is it going to cost me?
Anytime you see us glee clapping about a thing. Like, it's
Jimmy's
on.
about to be very mad. All right, so me and Jimmy were talking about this, and we had a very long conversation about it. And eventually he said, I'll let you do it, but more because I don't think it's going to be successful. He didn't
So that I can say
vocalize
I
all
told
this.
you so.
Yeah, he wanted me to get it out of my system, basically. Like, have the experience of it failing, and then I don't have to deal with my wife complaining about this anymore. Like, just let her do it. She's gonna fail, and then we don't have to talk about this anymore. We can go back to doing whatever it is we were doing 10 years ago.
My side of the story.
Whole weekend.
Researching conventions, especially startup conventions, is not an easy thing. You're going to be in the red for the first 5 years, and so I basically funded the first few JordanCons. Sure, the memberships helped, but every shortfall came from me.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I don't.
Jimmy and I were paying a couple $1,000s a year for JordanCon for like the first 3 of them.
Did we pay you back?
And then some.
Well, okay, so not in money.
I got a little nice statuette on Friday, so
Yeah.
that's good.
We get paid back in love, because one of the things that made us not have to pay for JordanCon out of our own pocket is, so in 2010 I got laid off from my job. I'm a school teacher, if you don't know that, and I tend to work at private schools. And when the economy tanked, private school enrollment just tanked along with it because you can't afford to send your kids to a fancy private school anymore. And what I do, the kind of teaching I do, is very, very specialized. And so there just wasn't jobs for me. And so I took a year off and I went to grad school and things like that. And so during that year where we're still paying for JordanCon out of our own pockets, but on one salary, Brandon was at DragonCon that year, and he took us out to dinner, and he's like, so how much does JordanCon really cost? And we're like, well, I mean, it's Brandon, so we'll tell him. And so we start going through, like, in vague terms, the financials. We're not pulling out bank statements or anything like that. And he's like, so what would you say if I said, I'm going to make that problem go away for you? And I'm like, well, what do you mean, Brandon? And he's like, well, we did the name drawing fundraiser for Heifer last year with Towers of Midnight. I want to do that with A Memory of Light. I want to do a name drawing contest, fundraiser for you guys, and the people who participate will get their names in the very last Wheel of Time book. And of course we say, sure, that's a great idea. The only condition he put on us is that we had to become a nonprofit organization to be able to take the donations. And so obviously we're going to agree to that because we've never really intended to make money off of JordanCon. We're not going to, this isn't how we're going to retire. And so we did the paperwork. The IRS would not give us 501c3, but they gave us 501c4. So we are a registered nonprofit with the IRS. And so me and Jimmy, by law, cannot make money off of JordanCon. Any surplus money at the end of the convention doesn't go back to me and Jimmy. It goes back into JordanCon. And so that's one of the reasons we're able to do such wonderful things for you guys every year, because any year that we've run a surplus, which has been pretty much every year since we did the fundraiser, we give that money back to you guys. So that's why we're able to do a con suite. That's why we're able to do 2 guests of honor now, when initially we only had 1. So if you guys, you see the money, like you see the money that you spent on this. We were very, very careful to make sure that you guys are getting your money's worth. We do carry a pretty hefty reserve cash fund. We could almost fund JordanCon out of that, but we don't need to because you guys are so awesome. I don't know where I'm going with my stories.
Okay, so in the
Shame on Jimmy.
You know how JordanCon 1 got set up as a chance for Jim to fail. How many times since then did you almost say the word?
After year 1, we created a 5-year plan, including year 1. So we had a 5-year plan on what we were going to do with JordanCon, which is, have the Wheel of Time focus that we have now, and then, then there's general fantasy, general science fiction, and movies, and from there. And that's like, as we grow in 5 years, we will see if it can sustain itself. And sure enough, after year 4, it did that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, we create such a family atmosphere that people just says, I'll be back next year. First time people just come in, it's like, I'll see you next year. It's like, it's only Friday. You might I still have 2 days to spend.
Slow down. Slow your roll.
Yeah. So people start asking, so when can I buy tickets for next year? We need to set up a website first.
Yeah.
So,
Like, I don't know.
and
What do
so-
you mean next year?
And so to answer your question, I said, after 5 years, let's revisit. And after year 4, the answer was made. It's like, okay, we can continue going.
Yeah. Yeah, but Jimmy's role at the convention has really changed a lot because initially he wanted nothing to do with it. Like he would drop me off at the hotel and would be fine. That was his plan.
Year 1, my title was general complainer.
Yes, yeah. And then we started a game room because we thought that might make him happy.
It did.
Happy. So he put Jimmy in charge of gaming. But then because Jimmy knows everything that I know because we talk about everything, people would always come and pester Jimmy about what was going on at the convention. Like, hey, I need this, can you go get this for me? And so Jimmy wasn't getting to spend time in the game room running the gaming stuff, which made him even more mad. So we ended up he's like, okay, fine, I'll be your vice chair because that's what the job I'm doing anyways. I might as well have the title. And then after that, Jimmy has been very involved, he really is a co-chair of the convention and does sometimes more than me to get this off the ground.
Can I get that in writing?
It's video.
Oh, it's video? Cool.
Yeah.
Don't worry. No, Jimmy's role is often to be the heavy, the one who says no and crushes our dreams. So, because there are many shenanigans where he has in fact stopped us and said, no, you can't do the thing.
You guys want an example?
So many examples.
Ball pit tank.
Man,
I don't know. We should have brought that.
God damn it, I forgot about it again.
Here's the thing. Okay, so yes, we wanted to have a ball pit.
Before ball pits were a thing. Before they were a thing.
Because and I spent $200 sending 12 cases of playpen balls to their house so that we could have the ball pit. And someone forgot to pick up the kiddie pool that was supposed to go along with it.
Who was that?
Who was that?
Powell?
He's not going to take that on the plane with him.
And
It's inflatable.
they're still in their garage. Every year,
Still in the boxes, all taped up.
we talk about how these are taking up a lot of storage space, and this would still be really funny if it showed up.
Each person one.
So what I'm hearing is that we need an intrepid volunteer with a car to go to Jimmy's house, and we can make this happen by tonight. You can get a pool. Yeah. I think there were 12 boxes originally.
Yeah,
I think
it's-
some of them have disappeared over time.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
somehow some of the boxes did not return back after the year I bought them.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, we forgot the floors. I brought them, and it's like we're just gonna take a hotel room and
put it in the
I
back.
do think about
put
putting
a cardboard in
Yeah.
between 2 double beds and just dump everything in there. And it's like that's not gonna work. That's not enough room. It's like that's not gonna work. It's like, well, trust me, it's not gonna work.
No. We did the math. It would work.
It would work. It would
Yeah.
work.
There's an online calculator for how
There
many
was.
boxes.
That's why we did the thing, and how we got the amounts and the shipping and the everything, because we actually did the area volume calculation for between the double beds.
That was an engineer, and he's kind of good at it.
Yeah.
They were gonna science the crap out of it.
We did. So it seems like a lot of the crap we do is really random, but most of the time we have really thought through the implications of. So if we start this whole thing with ribbons, what's gonna happen? Is this gonna,
Gary, stand up and show the crowd.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
I didn't even try. I didn't even
So,
try. It just
This is how I planned it.
Right.
I wanted this to be one of those conventions where people collected
Right.
ribbons because I think that's fun. Now, I'm not collecting ribbons right now because only I get the
She has the
chairperson
important
ribbon.
one, right?
So this is my statement.
Right.
I'm above you now. I am outside of your shenanigans.
But one of the things we actually talked about, we were like, these ribbons are cool, they do it at other conventions, should we do this? And one of the things that we were like was, well, one of the cool things about ribbons is that it fosters social interaction among the participants. Because you're trying to compare ribbons and see
Where did
who
you
has
get
the
that
most
one?
ribbons and where did this come from and what does this mean. And that was a thing that we affirmatively wanted to push. So we were like, yes, ribbons, let's order a whole bunch of batch ribbons.
Now I'm trying to convince you guys stickers are cool because stickers are way cheaper.
And actually, I think it's also a good way to compete with your husband.
Oh God, yeah, okay, so let me stand up, y'all. It skims the ground.
It's called that.
It is, so we put it on Stephanie Law a few minutes ago, and around her neck, it skims the ground where it skims on my face. So, yeah. So, not only am I competing with Val, I have won because the winner is the first one to touch the floor. Yes. So I have won.
He even has a handicap.
So I had the hustle, and I got most of these on Thursday because I'm really good at convincing people that they should give me things, and at the same time telling them that it would make Val mad. Makes them more likely to do the thing.
That convinced me. I ripped
Yes.
through my ribbons
Oh,
off
he
and gave
did.
it
He
to her.
did. He was like, here.
Here, take these.
So yeah. So but a lot of things about JordanCon are like that. And this is kind of the behind the scenes stuff, the how the sausage is made stuff. I don't know if this is interesting to y'all, but a lot of stuff about JordanCon is very intentional in that way. So one of the things, especially from the early years of JordanCon, that differentiates us from other conventions is our structure, which was, I want you to talk a little bit about what you were basing the structure of JordanCon off of, because it's very different than other 200-person conventions.
Yeah. Okay, so we're actually overstaffed for a convention of our size, and that's purposeful on our part because we want to do more than conventions of our size typically do. One of the reasons why we're staffed this way is because the first convention I ever worked and volunteered for was DragonCon, right? And so in my head, that's how you ran a convention. Like, you know, you get 80,000 of your closest friends together, you rent out a couple of hotels downtown, and you're like, this is how you do things. And so like in my head, like we were just like a smaller version of DragonCon. And so DragonCon has like the chair at the top. They actually have 2 chairs now. And then you have like the division heads underneath of them. And then the division heads have different departments under them. And everybody kind of knows what they do and who they report to. And there's like a whole org tree that you follow when you work for DragonCon. And so we have an org tree. We have divisions that are set up. Jimmy and I are at the top of it. And then under us are Jenna is operations, and Chris Seibert is business development, and Shannon is communications, and Bao is program. There's a lot of you people. But yeah, so like I could sit down and like kind of sketch it out on a cocktail napkin for you. That's actually how we came up with the original org tree. But yeah, like, and that was always from the very get-go. Like I wanted it to be super organized, and partly because I needed that framework because this was the 3rd fandom-related project I was working on at the time because I was still running the track at DragonCon, and I was very, very involved in Dragon Mount. I was running the White Tower organization, which was always like the largest forum organization they had. And I was also the community administrator, which meant that I was in charge of all the other orgs on Dragon Mount as well as my own. And like, I needed to be able to say, I kind of want this, but I don't know the details of it. You are going to figure out the details of it, and you're going to make it happen. And so I got people I trusted in place and said, okay, you're in charge of this, and I need you to just run with it. And they've been really, really good about that. We've had some changes in different people, but that structure's still there for the most part. We did make a big reorg this year because we used to have what we call the finance division. And finance was really kind of a catch-all place. Like it was, the printed programs were there, the website was there, what else was there?
Anything that touched money.
Anything that touched money except for registration was in there. And it no longer made sense to have those things together, especially since we wanted to really expand things and we wanted to have our own merchandise store, we wanted to do more with data analytics. By the way, everybody, no convention of our size has an analytics person on staff and does an annual survey like what we launched this year. Like, we're like doing some next level shit.
Oh, she's had people all weekend asking her if she's a paid consultant for, and she's like, no, this is
No, she's just volunteering her
field.
time.
She's volunteering her time. She actually has a PhD.
I
in
could be a
this,
paid
and she was
consultant?
like, I could help y'all.
Yeah, no, I'm extremely fortunate that I have so many people who are willing to do what they do for their real jobs and like come home at night after they've done their real jobs and put their kids to bed and then start again doing the same thing for me for free for no money, but just because they love JordanCon, they love you guys. Like it's ridiculous how many people will raise their hand and say, yeah, I'll do this for you. But yeah, so we've structured JordanCon very much like a real corporation. And usually when you're doing a convention of this size, you just have like your 10 best friends and you kind of just get everybody together and you're like, okay, like you're gonna run registration and you're gonna do our website and I'll handle the guests for you. And it's very, very casual and things like that. But no, we have like our own email accounts, we have like chains of command, we have like paperwork we fill out. We have a goddamn analytics person, people. I cannot emphasize enough how ridiculous that is.
And I thought you just organized this like the White Tower. Nomin at the top, the keeper, the Aja head.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Well, I mean, that's a structure that made sense to me too. Like, again, really anything that puts me over everybody else.
Right. So, and that, I mean, that even came into play when we were choosing board members and we were determining, like, we're gonna be a nonprofit, so we have to decide who actually is legally responsible for all this bullshit.
Yeah, so when we first incorporated JordanCon to get the nonprofit status, our original board of directors was just me and Jimmy and Jason. And the IRS came back to us and said, that's a lot of people who are related to each other on that board of directors. Yeah, like you need someone who can overrule you too. And we're like, okay, so we can increase the board of directors. We invited 2 more people to join our board of directors. And one of them is Aubree. And the other one is Matt Hatch, because we want people who were involved in JordanCon, involved in the fandom, but also we're not, and we'll talk about Aubree in a minute, but we're not overly involved in JordanCon. Like they didn't.
Good. I was actually waiting at you. Okay. Fine.
Like, y'all are gonna have to.
He's a blade master. He's in the brother that's
Yeah, I got lucky.
I do. Oh, I'm sorry. You're a possession. I don't need to talk about You're a ball. Yeah.
I love it that you laughed when you saw that.
Oh God. I was bringing out the badges, reading people's badges. Like, well, should I change? Like, no, he's a master.
Yeah, like sometimes he'll like leave spelling and things like that for people unless he knows it's supposed to be spelled.
Well, sometimes people have such long badge names.
Oh,
That's not gonna fit.
Yeah. No, I love all of her.
Hi, Cooper.
What? Sorry?
Oh, I'm
I am not listed in the books, but I was a very.
You should have put your name on the screen.
I did, but
You, Robbie and Tim, you guys were so really fast by the time that I get to you painful.
People with
Robbie
jobs
was
are
very
protected.
It is. Well, I'm on keeping up. I mean, straight through the wood and stuff.
Yeah, well, I don't know if they'll be able to talk.
Pretty good.
Just let me know
Yeah, you're doing pretty good. You're already up now. So that's
So I don't know who else is here that I need to.
So last time, Val and I were carrying around like green highlights.
Role at the convention. Aubree, when we started, was our senior director of program, and so she actually stepped down from that role and handed it off to Val so that she could take the spot of the board of directors. And one of the reasons, so other conventions like the LibertyCon that threw the party upstairs last night, their board of directors is the staff of the convention. They do it a little differently than we do. Like their registration head is also on the board of directors. Their program person is also on the board of directors. We decided not to do that because we wanted our chains of command to be very, very clear. The board of directors, their purpose at JordanCon is to supervise me and to make sure I'm doing my job correctly, to make sure that I'm being fiscally responsible, to make sure that I haven't made us legally liable for anything really, really dumb. And so I didn't want someone who had to take instruction from me also being in that position. Oh, like it felt very muddy. And so that's why our board of directors is separate off to the side.
So it's an interesting thing. I don't know if do you guys want kind of the perspective from the board of directors? Yes, you do. Okay. So what we tell people is that we're basically Jennifer's Horcruxes here at the convention, right? Our job at JordanCon as the board of directors, as part of like that public face of JordanCon, is to socialize, to check in, to take the pulse of the convention, to just kind of be there and make sure that everything is happening, that things are happening, right?
That I've actually thrown a convention with money.
Right, yes. That happened, yay. So the thing about being a board member is if a board member is handling a problem for JordanCon, it's either not really a problem, because otherwise we farm it out to the staff member to whom it belongs. So it's either not really a problem, or it's a really fucking serious problem that makes it's a hot dog, or but it's something that could really harm
impact our ability to hold JordanCon in the future.
Yeah. Right? Like we could get sued for this thing, right? Or it's something that touches our code of conduct, like that we had to do paperwork. So it's really one of those things where it's one of the two extremes. Mm-hmm. Like when Jimmy calls me, it's either like something that's not important at all, and he
wants to know about this homecoming thing, and if we can talk her out of it. Yeah.
Except that Jimmy was on board for the mums, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit.
I'm from Texas.
Or it's like, okay, so this thing happened, and we need a quorum. So please be
not giving you any names, but
and we're going to end the thing. Yeah. So it's one extreme or the other.
So do you guys do like Robert's rules or?
We don't do Robert's rules. We don't do Robert's rules. So we also do silly shit.
Yeah, we're very casual when we hold our board meetings.
We do, and
I mean, there's only five of us.
So a lot of the time, when three of us are standing around, we're like, we have a quorum, we can do stuff.
Technically, we can right here.
Well, technically, we can. Technically, right now, this could be a board meeting anytime. We can make whatever rules.
Well, legally, I have to give you 60 days notice that it's a board meeting. So
it's on the same.
Or it's an emergency.
Emergency board meeting.
It's an emergency board meeting.
Yes. So, but please don't make us do that because we really don't like having to do that.
Those are not.
Those are not the fun meetings. Yes.
And where are the board members based? Like.
Okay, that's a great question. So the other part of that is because specifically the board members are not as related to JordanCon, that it's kind of representatives of the fandom and trying to make sure that what we're doing is good for the fandom and the whole community. We're all over the place, just like JordanCon is all over the place. Mm-hmm. So they live here in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And I live in Texas. Matt Hatch lives in Utah, and Jason Denzel lives in California. So everything we're doing is over email or phone.
Yeah. And that's how a lot of we run JordanCon. So we are completely on Google Docs when we do our JordanCon stuff because there's just no way you can do all of this remotely without being on Google Docs.
What did you do before Google Docs?
Email.
Well, and fortunately for JordanCon, Gmail and Google Docs existed when we started. It wasn't nearly as fancy. Oh yeah. It's been around since before then. But when we started the track at DragonCon, like it was a lot of mailing spreadsheets back and forth and things like that. Hoping you had the latest version of whatever spreadsheet you needed. But yeah, JordanCon actually helped me get the job I have today because one of the things I do at my work, I teach a private school for kids with special needs. And we are one of the very few schools in Atlanta that are one-to-one on Chromebooks, which means that every single student in our school has a Chromebook that they carry to class with them and they do all their work on. Then I am in charge of our Chromebook program because when they first started buying these Chromebooks, nobody in the building knew what the hell to do with them. And I'm like, I know how Google Docs works because I do this thing for fun in what I laughingly call my spare time. So put me in charge of the Chromebooks and I will make sure all the kids learn how Google Docs works. I will train all the teachers on it. And so that's what I've been doing at work for the last couple of years. And so my title at work is Instructional Technology Specialist. And I spend a lot of my time not just teaching the kids how to use their Chromebook like for work, but also like how to be a good person on the internet and things like that. Like I'm a digital citizenship educator, so I teach the kids about how like online etiquette and things like that. Oh my God, if I can stop at least one person from becoming an internet troll, I'm trying. In fact, some of them are real hard though. But yeah, so like a lot of what I do at work, like even one of my jobs at work, like kind of informally, is to keep track of what memes are popular and hip with the kids these days. So that I can figure out which ones are racist and be like, you can't use Pepe the Frog anymore. It's not okay. I don't care if you just threw a chair at me over it. You cannot use Pepe the Frog anymore. Yeah.
Don't worry.
There's so much.
It's better that you don't know.
It's better.
No, that was she comes on telling these stories, and I'm like, who? What?
Yeah. They're singing this remix song at school, and it's driving me crazy.
Just search all the dank memes.
Right, all the dank memes.
Yeah.
I've got too much JordanCon stuff to do today.
No. My kids were all like, did you know that dank used to mean swampy, Mrs. Liang? Yeah, in fact, a couple years ago when you guys started talking about your dank meme stash, I was really confused because I thought you were doing memes about swamps.
All right.
And that didn't make sense.
Stay on topic. Hey, look, Panda.
So that's a good segue, especially for pandas. So one of the other things that we have affirmatively tried to encourage is a JordanCon culture, right? And it's because we didn't want to be one of the cons where everyone stands around awkwardly and doesn't talk to anyone else for years, right?
Those are awful.
So those are terrible, and we didn't want to do that. So we wanted to be the fun con where everyone talked to each other and liked each other, and we had pro-social behavior. So we do things like speed friending, wherein we introduce you to other things. Yeah, it's fun and cool stuff.
Yeah, no, we're very purposefully social with a lot of things that we ask people to do. Like a lot of the things we're not as thoughtful about it these days because now it's just more of our culture.
Right.
But definitely like the first couple years we were like, okay, how can we get people to actually talk to each other?
Right.
Because one of the things that I really dislike when I go to a convention, and I was at a convention a few months ago that was like this, is no one talks to me and I don't know who to talk to because I'm super introverted and I don't necessarily know that you're going to think I'm cool enough to talk to. And it's like, I don't want to walk into a room party and just sort of stand there awkwardly hoping like somebody says hello to me. I want someone to, I need someone to make the first move with me. And I know a lot of us, because we're like internet people, we're weird, we need that as well. So we wanted to give people, structured places to go talk to each other. That's why we throw parties on Saturday, because people who want to go to parties can go do that. Board gaming is very pro-social. We like to do the speed friending.
I was going to say, it's one of the things where I wanted to go with that is to talk about kind of the identity crisis we had in deciding to actually have a gaming room. We did because you resisted it for a while because you didn't want it to be the JordanCon gaming room where people go for 3 days and never leave and never shut. And that's when we were like, we need the 3-2-1 rule. And the 3 hours of sleep, 2 meals a day, 1 shower a day.
Every 24 hours.
Every 24 hours, 3 hours of sleep, 2 meals, 1 shower.
And I think I convinced Jennifer to have the game rooms. Well, at least she'll know where to find me.
That's what my soul is. There would be a room where Jimmy would be.
Because I think JordanCon 2, they couldn't find me, and they had a pool table up there where the concierge lounge was. So that's where I was. The convention was in that little hallway. That one hallway while I tracked, that was JordanCon.
Yeah.
And I was as far away as I possibly could.
Where we had a dance.
Yeah. And the story for the dance is always interesting. The story for how the dance did. So JordanCon 2, we just finished the costume contest and everything else, and that's it. Everybody dispersed. We went to upstairs to do Tarbell on Toast, which is a fandom, and we have to get together. And then I get this text message: "You need to come downstairs." It's like, what's going on? No, you need to come downstairs now. Okay, I come down there. It's like going, why do we have a dance party? Because we had this, if you go to the Center Track room, that's where we had a dance party. It was just an empty room, nothing going on. And
we had a dance floor set up because that was what we were using as our area for the costume contest.
That's what we were doing for the contest. And then, because Paul Belton was bored, and he goes, I want to throw a dance party.
And this was Paul's first JordanCon.
So if you know Paul, then you're like going, I'm going to do this. I got a laptop. And then Jay's like, I got speakers.
But we first con, there was like
We had a band play.
Yeah,
and I mean,
but everyone was dressing up because
Yeah.
we were new to this whole cosplay thing. That our idea of how to be an Aes Sedai was to put on like your old bridesmaid dress and a shawl.
Yeah,
That's
it
what
was
we're
like,
doing. Yeah.
it was more like a, I mean, because I remember thinking, because I didn't costume, but I remember that I wanted to get something nice to wear.
Yeah.
It was not a cotillion, there was another word you used, something for that, it wasn't like a dance or.
It was like a cocktail party sort of
It
thing.
was a ball.
Yeah.
It was a ball.
Yeah, and we had the charity auction was set up on tables in the back of the room.
Right.
Like the charity auction, the dance used to happen in the same room at the same time.
Yeah.
Because again, like I'm like my frame of reference for things, I always would copy what I've seen other things do. The fundraisers we hold at school are always like casino nights, and you have like the auction going on over here, and there's like the old people dancing over there, and like the jazz quartet or whatever. So in my head, this is like what you do to raise money for something. You get a jazz quartet, and you get like some old people dancing out there.
At least 4 or 5.
4 or 5.
Where the auction was
I think
happening.
that was the first one, was one of the last ones y'all did that.
Yeah, I think so. I don't remember exactly when we moved it into the.
But part
Yeah.
of it was a space issue too.
Yeah.
For a long time, we didn't have the luxury of being able to devote a portion of.
Right.
The
Space
vendor
was
hall.
always an issue.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of people.
Also, then you get people who are bidding on the charity auction that have been drinking and they'll pay.
Oh yeah, and
$60.
that's also part of the law. It's very, very helpful.
How much does the $5 bill? Yeah.
$515 for a $5 bill signed by Abe Lincoln.
Not Abraham
Surprisingly
Lincoln.
good girly handwriting.
And it was signed by a lot of people. I think George Washington signed it.
Eventually.
Eventually.
That was initially just Abe Lincoln.
And then I got into a shouting match with somebody, and we just kept on bidding and bidding. I did not, and as I thought I was joking, it's like, sold! I'm like, what?
It's in my jewelry box at home.
So shenanigans always
The
happen.
most valuable $5 bill.
Yes, I probably should have like brought it.
But going into that, the whole thing with the con names and themes and everything, a lot of y'all don't realize that's because Jennifer and I just think it's hilarious to do that.
They wanted to call this convention Rand Al Khan. I'm like, no. No.
It was always going to be JordanCon, but we wanted to do different themes each year. Because like, okay, so I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with WorldCon. WorldCon is a traveling convention. It's one of the oldest science fiction conventions still existing in the world. And every year, WorldCon is hosted by another city and another convention committee. Like, so it's just a completely different group of people running it every year. And so they don't always call it WorldCon. Like last year's was just WorldCon 75. But many times the convention committee will choose to call it something else. Like
Shy-Con, Lone Star Con.
yeah, like when we went to San Antonio, it was Lone Star Con. And when you go to Chicago, it's always called Shy-Con. I can't remember what some of the other ones they've done. Oh, when we went to Reno, Reno was Renovation. So they always had like some kind of silly pun involving convention and like the name of the city or where you're at. And so we're like, this sounds fun, let's do this. And
Let's
so
do this, but for Wheel of Time.
Let's do it Wheel of Time related, and let's have that be our theme for the programming, as well as for our t-shirts and badges and things like that, and to encourage cosplay in that direction too, because we very purposely did not do Aes Sedai or Black Tower themes until we'd already done some of the other things, because we wanted to encourage people to cosplay something else.
Well, we also, what we were doing, because I was the senior director of programming at the time. So what would happen is after JordanCon on Sunday night, Jennifer and I would sit around after a few drinks and plan next year's JordanCon and what the theme and the programming and everything was gonna kind of bear to look like.
It was one of those I told you so moments.
Yeah. So
So the first JordanCon, we didn't really emphasize the theme because we didn't want to confuse the hell out of people any more than they already were. But the first theme for JordanCon was Rand Al Khan. Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why we did kind of a formal ball thing for our first party on Saturdays, because I was thinking like, okay, what goes with Rand Al Khan? Does Rand even go to parties? The only party I can think of that was in the books that he'd been to was that Kyrenian ball in book 2. And so that's kind of what we were trying to go for, was like a Kyrenian ball atmosphere.
Yeah, and then so for the first few, what we did is actually try to do a theme from in book order. So the second one was JordanCon because they showed up in the second book.
If you go to
And then-
YouTube, you look up
Yeah.
JordanCon, you can see the dance party that Steve Godecki filmed and uploaded for us.
Yeah, yeah. And so then the third one was Consequin because Jennifer ruled everyone else. Third one was Consequin. Because everyone else wanted Forsaken.
No.
And she was not having it. So then the fourth one was Caracon, because the fourth book has the ideal showing up and doing all the cool stuff. And then the fifth one, we were like, oh, the White Tower thing finally blows up. So we were like, okay, we can have Caracon. And then actually, yeah. And then we went on something else. So
As we do.
As we do.
Two questions. The first one is short. That video that y'all showed, is that available?
It has been uploaded to YouTube.
So there was an interesting argument about that is because the song is copyrighted. So we have an issue with that. But we talked to Brandon Sanderson about it during lunch, and he's like, one of two things is going to happen. It's either going to get shut down for copyright, or the company is going to cash in on it. So they're going to claim it and take all the ad revenues. Like, I hope that we're fine with that because people are going to watch the crap.
Yeah.
So.
But what about the copyright? I know some of the Robert Jordan photos that we don't know who shot. They took those.
Yeah, there's a lot of issues with
there's
the copyright in the video. So we initially so the video was a surprise to us until like a couple weeks ago because the group of people who had been working on it had done it as a surprise.
Well, and also like I knew they were working on it, but I didn't know if it was going to happen or not.
I knew they were working on it
because
pictures are from me.
Yeah. So
they've been trying to keep it a secret from me and Jimmy as well.
Yeah, I knew it was that they wanted to do it back in like months ago, like in October, I think. Jeff Daniel was like, "Hey, I'm thinking about doing this thing. Could you do the thing?" And I was like, "That sounds like an amazing idea. Let me know." And then I didn't hear anything from him for like 4 months, and so I didn't know if it was really a thing that was going to come together or not, or if it was just a really ambitious goal that
So yeah, if the pictures at the beginning of that video are an issue, we probably can ask Cooper to edit it and then re-upload it. But the questions we had were the legality of the pictures and the song. But the way Brandon explained to me, it's going to be one of two things: it's copyright is going to be forced to be taken down, or they would take it over. But if you have issues with the pictures, we can get.
I don't have an issue with pictures.
So,
yeah,
I gave my permission for my pictures.
So. Yeah, and all the other pictures for that was from JordanCon belong to JordanCon. So I mean that's part of the thing when you buy your badge. Any pictures from JordanCon, that you give us permission, that you give access to, we have the rights to use it for any promotional uses. So
that's the second thing. That's okay. The core of the question is like convention identity crisis, but like. We started this because of Robert Jordan and his books, and we kind of co-opted, Brandon Sanderson's books, and we're kind of, running both, and it works right now. But is there a concern about the future that like this is going to become more Brandon Sanderson than Robert Jordan? Or
no, we don't think so.
Yeah.
So we purposefully. We've been very purposeful on including the Brandon Sanderson fans because it's the new hotness right now. We like it too. And Brandon's good to us. But we've talked about doing like a Sanderson theme for JordanCon instead of having it always be a Wheel of Time theme, and it just hasn't felt right yet. And
we still have a lot of puns, y'all.
There's like a Google Doc somewhere. Yeah. And we thought that interest in our Wheel of Time track would die out. And then when Theresa took over the track 2 years ago, all of a sudden there was like this huge rejuvenation of interest in our Wheel of Time track because Theresa has access to resources that the previous track director didn't have access to. She's just really passionate about it. And so she's really like taken our Wheel of Time track from something that was still very good and people were very interested in it because of course we were, but has really just elevated it. And so it's really another focus of the convention again. And I just don't see that changing. I don't think Wheel of Time is going to stop being something that we're interested in. It's just not. And that's even without considering that a movie or TV show or something might happen someday. I don't see, and there's no tension between Sanderson fans and Wheel of Time fans. Like, we're cool with all those people, they're cool with us. Like, a lot of beta readers for Sanderson are also Wheel of Time fans and vice versa. I feel like it's a giant sandbox we can all play in very happily together.
Randy came in and sort of robbed JordanCon to find these people.
No, he's got like all my cool volunteers.
What's interesting is, in the forum, the Facebook forum, somebody who was coming for the first time asked why the name was JordanCon. And I thought it was really cool that this person was coming to the con because they heard it was a great con. And we have the whole Wheel of Time history, and we can introduce this person to that. But also, we have a reputation for a well-done con and good people, and the whole emphasis on literature and science fiction and fantasy. And you find new authors this way, and I think that's a really cool thing, because Jim was all about literature and reading.
Well, and that's one of the reasons why we went with JordanCon as the name instead of WotCon, because we want the emphasis to be on the author, not on the series. And so we wanted people to realize that this was a convention for authors. One of the first tracks that because when we first did JordanCon, we had like one tiny room. But one of the first tracks we created was a writer's track, because we're like, what would be a better way to honor Robert Jordan than by helping to train up the next generation of fantasy writers, or even just genre writers in general. And so, like, the writer's track has always been a very strong focus of JordanCon because of that.
Which I think is also something that appeals to Brandon, because of course he's got writing excuses.
Yeah.
My question was about that. Have they done any writing excuses, like live recording here?
Okay,
So to get a writing excuses podcast at your convention, you have to have at least 2 members of writing excuses. So we've had members of writing excuses as guests at JordanCon, but never enough of them at the same time. Like the year we had Mary Robinette Quall as our guest of honor, that was one of the years Brandon skipped. And so we have talked about inviting other members of writing excuses as guests of honor at some point, trying to coincide that with Brandon, or just inviting them all out as like co-guests of honor and doing it that way. It's going to happen at some point.
Record a bunch of ones. So we're doing that.
Yeah, I think they get together, they record like a bunch of short episodes, and they edit and rehearse them out over time. Yeah.
So it's interesting that one of the ways that we have been able to get guests for the convention is, hey Brandon, can you ask your friend to help us do the thing?
Yeah. No, that was actually how I started my first email to Mary Robinette Quall, was, I think Brandon Sanderson has told you about us. We would love to have you as our guest of honor. And then I kind of like explained what JordanCon was. And she's like, oh yeah, Brandon's told me all about you guys. I would be delighted.
Right.
Yeah. That was number 4. Yeah. That was our first year at the Doubletree.
Yeah. And then I know Pat, when we were able to get Pat, people were like, how'd you get Pat Rothfuss? It was like
persistence.
And
I asked him like 3 times.
And also we told him Brady would be there.
Yeah.
So
he wanted to hang out.
they would hang out together. Yeah. So
But one of the other things I haven't noticed is that when we have other authors and so forth, they tend to have a great time, they tend to want to come back.
Yeah.
I mean, and artists, they all have a good time, they want to come back, they tell their friends about it.
David Coe, who's one of our author guests this year, he was actually our guest of honor at the 3rd JordanCon. He was the first non-Wheel of Time person to be a guest of honor at JordanCon. And he was really, really brave to do that. But yeah, like he started coming back a few years ago on his own to participate in the writer's track and to do stuff with us. He's like, it's phenomenal how much you guys have grown, and like, this is so great. I love that I was one of your first guests of honor. But yeah, David is fantastic. We haven't been to any of his stuff or read his books yet.
Well, Blue's the same way, right? He keeps coming back year after year.
We don't know what his problem is.
Yes. Blue,
You can't get rid of him.
what year did you first come, Blue?
This is year number 6, so it would have been
So, yeah.
12. But I came first just as an attendee. Ended up pitching a couple novels and things, and the next year I came back as an author guest. So I have always considered, and will always consider, JordanCon my home convention. And I just, whenever I get to help them, they help me. Speaking of writer's crap. No, it's awesome. And I love it, and it is such an inspiration even to the next crop of writers that has grown up, because it really taught me how to be not just a technical writer, you know, how to interact, how to talk, and how to be a cool guest, and how people should be treated, and how they react when they're treated well. And
yeah, I think one of the best things we've had about JordanCon is meeting all these authors, new authors, established authors, and it's just, and they just keep coming back for more, and they keep bringing their friends, and it's just great. And just never
Oh
growing.
man, my favorite is when you have book deals signed at JordanCon.
Yes.
Book
Michael
deals.
Livingston.
Book deals signed at JordanCon.
Yeah, so Michael
With
Livingston.
editors or
Yeah,
agents or,
so the guy that writes the medieval history stuff on Tor.com also has a fantasy series out, which is excellent if you haven't read it. And he's a Robert Jordan scholar as well. And he sold his novel series at the bar at JordanCon 4 to Tor, because we originally, when we were first getting started, we always had a lot of Tor people hanging around for some reason. They have better things to do these days.
So how has it been working with Team Jordan so closely? Because they've always been sort of integral to the process, but it's been nice because they're people.
It is nice because
interact as people.
Right. And for a lot of them, they don't go to other cons.
Right.
They come here because they want to come hang out with us.
I mean, it's kind of,
so
in some ways, it's like a Rickney family reunion.
it is.
Yeah.
So the first year, we had intentionally invited them and said, hey, we're doing this thing. We want to honor Jim.
Okay,
Like,
so
would
first
you
I was
please-
just glad they weren't suing me.
Yes.
Okay, so like I like to ask for forgiveness instead of permission. So I didn't tell Robert Jordan or Harriet or anybody that I was doing this. I just sort of announced it. So when Harriet contacted me and said, would it be okay if I came to JordanCon? We were like, yes. And I was like, sure.
Just go bring your lawyers.
Pretty please.
Oh, no.
She did.
Yeah.
They did bring their
She does
lawyer,
bring her
and
lawyer.
now he comes back.
Steve is amazing.
He has,
He's
loves Steve. He is a delight. And but yeah, so and Amy's right there. Probably talking about
I'm not Team Jordan. I'm just married to Team Jordan and best friends with him. But I will say, for me, the evolution of how Team Jordan interacts with JordanCon, the first JordanCon, I missed most of the first day because my mother was ill and I had to wait for somebody to come and be with her. And I drove in separately from Alan. I got here and Alan says, that's great, they're really friendly, and he introduces me to Jenna.
Not as great as we thought.
And we're going up to the room, and it's this elevator, and there's one, it's like I remember it as a glass elevator, I'm talking to him and telling him about it, and there's somebody else on the elevator, and I take a breath, because I talk a lot, and I take a breath, and the person comes up and says, excuse me, Mr. Bielaczyc, may I have your autograph? Okay, now Alan is a regular guest on the podcast.
Yes. So I'll tell my Wilson story from JordanCon 1, because Wilson is a delight, and we called him our fan guest of honor at JordanCon 1, right?
He is the only fan guest.
Wilson, like how did Wilson find out about it?
It was because
They all
was like,
like drag him
we're
out.
gonna bring
Yeah.
we're gonna bring the family along, right? Like something like that, yeah.
Yeah, so Harriet was our first guest of honor because when she said, I want to come to JordanCon, I'm like, cool, we're paying for it.
Yeah.
And so, same with Wilson. Like, we wanted Wilson to be our fan guest of honor because that's something that the other conventions do. They'll like, invite a fan that we think is kind of cool, and should be, like, more notable.
And
so,
Wilson had been blogging and stuff.
Yeah.
You know, Superman's a fan of Jordan.
Oh, we know.
Yeah.
We're aware.
Yeah. I got tagged in a lot of posts about that. Yeah.
So Wilson, because he had been updating the blog as Jim was his health was failing, and he had been doing that stuff. So we had been having these interactions with the fans, and then he really wanted to attend and do meet some of us, and kind of see what this whole thing is about. When they got here, I think it was Saturday, they were so happy and so excited. And Wilson, I don't know what was in his cup, but it wasn't water. So it's potato juice. It was potato juice. But we had a panel where Harriet graciously allowed us to play Jim dictating the prologue, right?
I got chills again.
Yeah. And Wilson was sitting next to me, and after that recording played, he just had the Wilson look in his eyes, and he leaned over to me, and he was like, I have to, okay, yeah, he's just like, yeah, whisper to it. Aubree, I have to tell you something, because I have to share this with someone. I haven't been able to tell anybody about this. There's a city in the plains. And that was like the most exciting thing for him that no one else knew and he wasn't allowed to talk about. And the most exciting thing was there was a city in the plains. Yeah, it was kind of awesome. I felt all special. But I knew there was a city in the plains.
Yeah, Wilson is one of the reasons we have coffee clutches, actually, because I would see Wilson sitting down with groups of people because Wilson just wanted to keep Jim's memory alive. And so he would sit down with people and just start telling family stories. And I saw that, I'm like, man, wouldn't it be cool if we just sort of formalized this and started having people could actually know when to go find Wilson or Harry or to go talk to them about things. And so that's how the coffee clutches started, because those are what you call small group sessions at conventions, yeah. And so instead of having it be authors initially, it was just members of the Whitney family or Team Jordan, and you just get to sit down and just shoot the shit with them for a little while. And then we did it with our guests of honor, and we did it with other people, and so now it's like a whole thing on its own. But it started off with me seeing Wilson sit down, I think it was probably the guys from Twopcast, at the second or third JordanCon, and just start telling stories about Jim and family stories and things like that. I'm like, we gotta get this on the schedule.
Yeah. So I know Alan showed up. So welcome,
Hey, Alan.
So one of the other things that shows up in my memories on Facebook, my flashback, is I used to bring my daughter to JordanCon when she was a proto-human. And then the year that she was 1, that we brought her to JordanCon, she had a pink ball that someone gave her. And she was not going to give up the pink ball for anything. So I have a photo that shows up on my timeline every April where Alan, in an attempt to get the pink ball from her, is whispering in her ear the end of the Wheel of Time. And I didn't get to hear it. She was the first to know. And he told her the real ending. Like what? Yeah.
Did he get that?
He did not.
So ungrateful.
So ungrateful. So we are technically at our time. So thanks for coming to my party. So, and if any of you need to swear your oaths,
Already did that twice.
got that.